Hi everyone, in this video we are going to discuss about how to create a Windows-based Azure virtual machine.
If you want to go through the complete course, you can access it through our website. Link of website is given in the description. Now let's come back to the topic.
First of all, we will open our Azure portal and the URL for the same is portal.azure.com. It will ask for my Azure account credential. Already I have created my Azure account and I will mention my email address here. After mentioning the email address, go ahead and click on next and mention password. Then click on sign in, then click on yes, and now I am successfully logged into my Azure portal. If I come to top left corner, we can see there are 3 lines. Click on it. Under this you will find out an option called all services, and here all of the Azure services are categorized into different categories. For example, compute is a category, and under this compute category multiple services are listed. Those are used to create resources related to computing. Similarly, there are a lot of categories are listed here. Let's say if I click on networking, so in this networking category, all of the services related to networking are listed here. And through these services, we can create different networking resources. Let's say I want to create a virtual machine, and to create a virtual machine, I will use virtual machine service, and virtual machine service is part of compute category. So let's go ahead and click on compute, and here we will find out virtual machine service. Just go ahead and click on it. As soon as I click on it, it will redirect me to the virtual machine service here. From here, I can create my virtual machine. Other than that, if I come to search, from here also I can find out my services. Let's say I'm looking for virtual machine service. So simply I will come here and type virtual machine. And as soon as I write my service name under services, we can see the service here. So just go ahead and click on virtual machine. It will take me to the same page. Through that we can create our virtual machine here. So now to create a virtual machine, I will click on create and I will click on this first option, Azure virtual machine. So go ahead and click on it. First of all, it will ask me for project details, and under project details, it is asking about my subscription and a resource group. So when I created my account, I opted for free trial subscription, and under this subscription, I got a predefined credit, and this credit I can utilize within a month. Right now, I will select my subscription as free trial and I will create a resource group here. So let's say I'm creating a resource group and the name of resource group is my RJ. So go ahead and click on OK, and now my RJ is reflecting here under resource group. Now the important question is, what is a resource group? Resource group, as name suggests, is a group of resource. We can imagine it as a container also, which logically group our resources. For example, we are creating our virtual machine. Let's say this virtual machine name is VM1. So basically this virtual machine VM1 will be grouped under this particular resource group here, which is my RJ. Now next question is, what is the use of resource group? To understand this concept, I am drawing one diagram here. Let's say in our company, there are 2 departments. One is IT department and second is engineering department. Both of the department is using Azure portal and creating their resources. Now we want to identify which resources is created by which department so that we can get a fair idea like how much amount we are spending as a bill for the resources created and managed by different department in our organization. So for that reason, we will use resource group here. So let's say this is our subscription, and in our case the name of subscription is free trial, and under this subscription we will create 2 resource group. So this is my first resource group and the name of this resource group is my IT, and this resource group belong to IT department. Similarly, I will create a second resource group also, and name of this resource group is my engineering, and this resource group belong to engineering department. Now whenever IT department create their resources, let's say they are creating any virtual machine, so they will create this particular virtual machine inside this resource group. So let's say this is my VM1, and when I'm creating this virtual machine, I have selected my IT resource group. So this resource will be grouped under this particular resource group here. Similarly, if IT department people create multiple resources and use my IT resource group, so all of the resources will be grouped under this resource group here. So benefit of this approach is that we can easily identify how many resources are created by the IT department under this resource group, and billing generated under this resource group we can directly associate with IT department. Same approach we can also follow here. So whenever engineering department want to create any resources, they can create under my engineering resource group, so that they can be logically grouped under my engineering resource group here. And whatever billing is generated for this particular resource group, it means it is directly associated with the engineering department. So the benefit is that we can monitor how many resources are created by different department, how much billing is generated by these resources, and also we can put a cap and other kind of access restriction here. Let's come back to our portal. Now I have created a resource group, and the name of this resource group is my RG, and under this resource group I want to create a virtual machine, and name of this virtual machine is VM1. Here we can see that when we want to create a virtual machine, multiple fields we are supposed to fill up. Some of the fields are mandatory fields and some of the fields are optional field. Wherever we find out this red asterisk, it means these are mandatory fields, we cannot skip them. But wherever this red asterisk is not given, it means those are optional settings. After virtual machine name, we will select our region. If I click on this drop down, you can see multiple regions are listed here, and in these regions Microsoft Azure has deployed their data center. So I belong to India and I want to create this virtual machine in India region. So out of this list I will select Central India here. So go ahead and click on Central India. It means that in Central India region Microsoft Azure has deployed their data center, and inside that data center my virtual machine is going to be deployed on a physical server. After selecting region, next setting is availability option, and through this setting I can ensure redundancy for my virtual machine. Availability is a dedicated topic. In our coming videos we will discuss this topic in detail, and after understanding the concept in and out, it will be easy to configure it here. So as of now I will skip this setting, and here it is mentioned no infrastructure redundancy required. Next option is security type. Let it be default as well. Trusted launch virtual machine, and let's focus on image now. If I click on this drop down, you can see multiple images are listed here. Primarily all of these images are categorized into two categories. One is Windows based image and other is Linux based image. If I want to create a Windows based virtual machine, so I can select Windows image from this list, and if I want to create a Linux virtual machine, I can select the Linux image. Let's say for this example I want to create a Windows based virtual machine, and out of this image list I'm going to select Windows Server 2022 Data Center Azure Edition. So go ahead and click on it. It means on my virtual machine Windows Server 2022 Data Center Azure Edition is going to be deployed as an operating system. Next setting is VM architecture. So basically this is our processor architecture. Two options are available. First one is ARM64 and the second option is x64. When we select VM architecture as x64, so this architecture is compatible with most of the application, but when we want to deploy application, those are specifically compatible with ARM64. So in that case, as a VM architecture, we can select ARM64 here. Right now, ARM64 is not compatible with Windows Server 2022 Data Center image. You can see the message is mentioned here. ARM64 is not supported with the selected image. But let's say if I change my image, so instead of Windows, let's say I'm selecting Ubuntu Server. So now we can see ARM64 is also enabled, and if we want as a VM architecture, we can also select ARM64 here. ARM64 has 50% better price performance compared to x64. It means that in less cost we can get better performance in case of ARM64 here. So for this practical, I'm going to deploy Windows Server 2022 data center, and for this image x64 is only supported VM architecture here. After this, our next setting is run with Azure Spot Discount. Usually whenever Microsoft Azure data center has any unused capacity available, in this case Microsoft Azure provide this unused capacity in discounted rate. This is called as a spot discount, and with the help of this spot discount we can create spot instances. It means virtual machines on discounted rate. But there is a catch here. Whenever Microsoft Azure need capacity, in that case Microsoft Azure can take this capacity back from our virtual machine. In this situation, either virtual machine will stop or or it can be deleted. That is totally depend on what kind of eviction policy we have selected. Usually Microsoft Azure gives 30-second notice period before taking back the resources from the virtual machine. Let's say if I want to run my virtual machine with Azure Spot Discount, so I need to select this checkbox, and here there are two type of eviction type mentioned here. First one is capacity and second one is price or capacity. If I select first option, in that case, whenever Microsoft Azure need capacity, it can take it back from our virtual machine. If I go for second option, where price or capacity both are mentioned, in that case, Azure will take back the capacity from our virtual machine. Either Azure need capacity or the prices of unused capacity exceeds more than our specified maximum price. So usually whenever we go for a spot discount, we also mention our maximum price. It means the maximum price what we are ready to pay for unused capacity which is allocated with our virtual machine. Because Microsoft continuously change cost of unused capacity and it is totally depend on demand and supply logic. So whenever cost exceed than our specified maximum price, in that case also Microsoft Azure can take back the capacity. Whenever Microsoft Azure take back the capacity, in that case what should happen to our virtual machine can be decided by eviction policy. So there are two options given here. First one is stop/deallocate and second one is delete. If we select the first option, in case of eviction means whenever Microsoft Azure take back the discounted capacity from our virtual machine will be stopped here. And if we select delete, in that case, whenever eviction happen, virtual machine will be deleted. As of now, I will uncheck this option here. Next setting is size. With the help of size, we can basically decide here how much virtual CPU and virtual RAM we want to allocate with our virtual machine. Let's say if I click on see all sizes, here you can see the list of all VM sizes. First column represent our VM size. This is our VM type. Then virtual CPU is mentioned. Then RAM is mentioned. This is number of data disk which is supported with the virtual machine size. This is our maximum input output per second which is supported with virtual machine size. This is our temporary storage. This column represent whether premium disk is supported with virtual machine size or not. And this is our monthly cost of virtual machine. So let's say for this virtual machine, I want to select D2S_V3. With this VM size, I'm getting 2 virtual CPU, 8 GB of RAM, maximum 4 data disk can be attached to my virtual machine, maximum input output per second which is supported, that is 3200, temporary storage size is 16 GB, premium disk is supported, and I'm supposed to pay 11,294.05 INR per month. Usually the cost of virtual machine is calculated on the hourly basis. This is an estimated monthly cost here. So I'm selecting D2S_V3. After selecting this VM size, go ahead and click on select. Once we select our size here, come to administrator account. So we are creating an administrator account for our virtual machine. Let's say username for this administrator account is Sanjay KA. Then mention your password. Whenever you are mentioning your password here, just make sure that you are following the guideline. If my password is as per the guideline of Microsoft Azure, you will find out a green tick here. Similarly for username also, let me confirm my password again. And once we mention our username and password, come to inbound port rule. So as of now, we have configured multiple settings for our virtual machine. Let's try to understand it with the help of diagram. So I'm creating a virtual machine here and the name of this virtual machine is VM1. For this virtual machine, I have selected a size and the size is standard V2S_V3. So this is D here. And under the size we got 2 virtual CPU and 8 GB of RAM. In this virtual machine also I have deployed an image which is Windows Server 2022 data center and a VM architecture which I have selected for this virtual machine, that is x64. Also I have created an administrator account and the username of administrator account is Sanjay KA. And as well as I have also configured password for the same. Whenever I create a virtual machine, with this virtual machine, one network interface is also created. So let's say this is a network interface. You can compare it with NIC card of physical server. In our physical server, We have NIC card where we connect our LAN cable. Similarly, this is our virtual network interface which is attached to our virtual machine. So all of the networking configuration basically we do with this network interface only. So this is a gateway from where network traffic actually enter or exit from our virtual machine. Let's come back to our Azure portal and focus on inbound port rules. Once my virtual machine is created, I want to take a remote access of this virtual machine over internet. So for that reason, under public inbound ports, I will select allow selected ports, which is by default selected, and from select inbound ports, I am selecting port number 3389. Through that actually we can take the RDP session of this virtual machine. Other ports are also available. Based on our requirement, we can select the port which we want to open and access through the internet. Then go ahead and click on next. It will take us to the next tab which is related to disk configuration. Whenever we create a virtual machine, with virtual machine one OS disk is also created. OS disk means a disk where operating system is installed. While creating this virtual machine, we have selected an image also, and same image is actually going to deploy on this disk here. Let's understand it with the help of diagram. So we are creating this VM1 virtual machine, and with this virtual machine one OS disk is also going to be created. So let's say this is our OS disk, and on this OS disk actually this image is going to be deployed. So this image actually we had selected while creating this virtual machine, and same image is going to deploy inside this OS disk. Whatever data we store inside this OS disk is by default encrypted. Encryption means data is in non-readable form, and whenever any unauthorized user try to access our disk from the backend, he cannot read our data because data is in encrypted form. Type of OS disk is by default premium SSD, and delete with VM option is by default selected here. It means whenever we delete our virtual machine, along with this virtual machine, this OS disk will also be deleted here. If I uncheck this option, in that case, if I delete my virtual machine, OS disk will not delete here, and we can attach this OS disk with other virtual machine. So let it be selected only. As I mentioned that whatever data we store inside this premium SSD, which is our OS disk, that is in encrypted form. And for the encryption, we need an encryption key also. And this key is provided by the Microsoft Azure by default. So you can see under key management, platform managed key is mentioned here. Other than OS disk, if you want, we can create data disk and attach to our virtual machine. Data disk is used to store additional data like we have seen in our laptop device. We have D drive, E drive, F drive. Similarly with virtual machine, if we want to have additional data disk, we can create and attach it here. In more generic term, OS disk is our C drive. By default, D drive is assigned to our temporary storage, and if we create and attach additional data disk here with this virtual machine, we can assign our own drive letter to these data disk. We will discuss about all these concepts in detail in our storage module, where we will also see how to deploy this practically. As of now, we have only OS disk, it means our C drive. Also, Microsoft Azure will assign a temporary disk with our virtual machine. Now go ahead and click on next again, and it will bring us to networking tab, and through this tab we can do network configuration for our virtual machine. So we had discussed whenever we create a virtual machine, along with this virtual machine a virtual network interface is also created. So this is our network interface which is attached to virtual machine, and if I want to connect this virtual machine to a network, I will connect it through this network interface only. So here I want to create a network. So let's say this is my virtual network. Whenever we create our virtual network, we also need to specify a network range. So let's say the range is 10.0.0.0/16. Inside this virtual network, I will create a subnet, and the name of this subnet is, let's say, subnet 1. For the subnet also, we will configure a network range. So let's say the CIDR range is 10.0.1.0/24. And after this, through my network interface, I will connect my virtual machine to this subnet. So whenever I connect my virtual machine to this subnet with the help of this network interface, in this case, one IP address from this subnet range is going to be assigned on this network interface as well. And same thing we are going to configure with the help of Azure portal now. If I come back to Azure portal, now you can see that this is my network interface and I want to connect network interface of my virtual machine to the subnet, which is part of the virtual network VNet1. So first of all, I'm supposed to create a virtual network here. By default, you can see one virtual network is going to be created and the name of this virtual network is VM1-VNet. Because this is our first video, if we want, we can deploy our virtual machine directly into this virtual network also. But I'm going to create a new virtual network. So go ahead and click on create new. First of all, I'm supposed to give the name of my virtual network, that is VNet1. For this virtual network VNet1, I will specify my IP address range. So by default, one range is mentioned here, that is 10.0.0.0/16. This is as per my diagram. Let it be as it is. Now I will come to the subnet here. Inside this virtual network VNet1, I want to create a subnet and the name of the subnet is subnet1. So already one subnet is there. I will rename it simply. So name of the subnet is subnet1. Then I need to mention the IP address range. So as per my diagram, I will mention 10.0.1.0/24 and then go ahead and click on OK. As soon as I click on OK, you can see under network interface configuration, virtual network is selected as VNet1. Inside this VNet1 virtual network, I have created a subnet1 and the IP address range is also reflecting here. And once virtual machine is created, one IP address from this range going to be assigned with my network interface here of my virtual machine. So if I come back to my diagram, on this network interface, one private IP address is going to be assigned. Private IP address will be assigned from this subnet range where I have attached my network interface of this virtual machine. Also, if I want, I can assign a public IP address to this network interface. Public IP address is an IP address which can be accessed through the internet. It means if I assign a public IP address to this network interface which is attached to my virtual machine, in that case we can access this virtual machine over internet by using this public IP address. The scope of private IP address is only inside this virtual network. If someone is trying to connect this virtual machine from inside this virtual network, he can use the private IP address. But if we want to access this virtual machine through internet, in that case we need this public IP address here. So let's say if I want to assign a public IP address also with this network interface, in that case I will come back to my Azure portal. Here we have option of public IP address, and if I don't want to assign public IP address to my virtual machine, I can click on this drop down and select none. So in this case only private IP address is going to be assigned. Public IP address will not assign here, and it means that I cannot access this virtual machine over the internet. If I want to assign a public IP address, let's select first option here. In this case, one public IP address will be created with the name of VM1-IP, and inside this name one public IP address is going to be assigned. So once virtual machine is created, we can see our public IP address as well as the private IP address. Once both IP addresses are visible, we will paste it on our diagram. If we see under select inbound ports, we had selected RDP port number 3389. So basically it means once this virtual machine is created, we will have the public IP address, and on this public IP address we have opened our port number 3389 so that through internet via port number 3389 using my public IP address I can connect my virtual machine here. Once my virtual machine is created, we will verify this fact practically. Now again I will come back to my Azure portal and then go ahead and click on review plus create. You can see there are multiple other tabs are also available, and these tabs we are going to cover up under different modules of different Azure courses. As of now, because this is my first video of this course, I just wanted to give an insight how to practically work on Azure portal. All of the mandatory settings we have filled up as of now to create this virtual machine, and directly I will go ahead and click on review plus create. Under the process of review, Microsoft Azure conduct a validation and try to find out all mandatory fields are filled up properly or not. Once validation is passed, you can see create option is enabled on the bottom. Just go ahead and click on create. As soon as I click on create, you will find out one notification here which says deployment in progress. Now it will take 2 to 3 minutes for the deployment of this virtual machine. Once this virtual machine is created, we will review our virtual machine. Then finally we will try to connect this virtual machine from our laptop via internet. After some time, virtual machine deployment has completed successfully. If I click on go to resource, it will take me to the virtual machine VM1 which we have created just now. Under properties of this virtual machine, we can see as an operating system, Windows Server 2022 Data Center Azure Edition is reflecting here. This virtual machine we had deployed in Central India region, and also we had selected x64 as VM architecture. If we come to the networking part, on this virtual machine, one private IP address is assigned. Let me copy it from here and let's paste it here on diagram. So this is my private IP address, and this IP address is assigned from this subnet range here. As we discussed earlier, whenever we assign an IP address, actually it is assigned with network interface. Also we had opted for public IP address, and if I come back to my portal again, under public IP address, we can see one public IP address assigned to my virtual machine. So I can copy this also and let's paste it here on the diagram. So now we can connect our virtual machine through this public IP address using port number 3389. Now we will see how to take remote session of our virtual machine. Let's come back to our portal and click on connect. By default, RDP is selected here, and we want to take the RDP session only of our virtual machine. Here under IP address, we can see public IP address of our virtual machine is mentioned here, and on the same public IP address, we are trying to connect on this virtual machine. Also you can see port number is mentioned, that is 3389. This is RDP port which we had opened while creating our virtual machine. So go ahead and click on download RDP file, then launch it, then click on connect, and now mention your administrator user account. So as an administrator account, I had mentioned Sanjay KA, mention password, and then click on OK. Click on yes, and now I am successfully connected to my virtual machine. Once we are logged into our virtual machine, as per our requirement, we can do our setup here. If you want to come out from this virtual machine, just put your cursor up, and from here we can minimize this virtual machine, and now I'm back to my laptop. So as per this diagram, we have successfully created our virtual machine, and we have also connected remotely to this virtual machine using public IP address. Once we are connected to the virtual machine, we can do our setup based on the requirement, and whenever we want, we can stop this virtual machine, and as well as we can delete this virtual machine also. In next video, we will discuss about few critical administrative tasks which we can perform on our virtual machine. I hope this concept is clear now. See you in next video. Thank you.